sun was just beginning to rise over the endless Atlantic when a British merchant vessel spotted something drifting on the horizon. At first, the crew thought it was a small fishing boat, maybe even a chunk of wreckage. But as they drew closer, they realized it was neither. It was a fully intact ship, sails raised, hull undamaged, quietly rocking with the waves. Yet something was terribly wrong. There were no signals, no signs of life, and no one answering their calls. As they approached, the silence became suffocating. The deck was empty, the wheel was unmanned. Food was still laid out on the table, as if the crew had just stepped away for a moment. They were gone, all of them, and this was no ordinary vessel. It was the legendary Mary Celeste, a ship that would go down in history as one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the sea. Ghost ships are more than just pirate legends or sailor stories whispered around campfires. They are real vessels, abandoned without reason, found adrift in the middle of the ocean, often in perfect condition, but utterly lifeless. And of all the ghost ship stories ever told, none has puzzled historians, sailors, and scientists more than that of the Mary Celeste. Because in this case, there were no storms, no signs of battle, no evidence of disease, and no clue as to what could make an entire crew vanish into thin air. Tonight, we're diving deep into the chilling mystery of the Mary Celeste, the ship that set sail with 10 souls aboard and arrived with none. To understand what happened that day, we need to go back to where this ship's strange story truly began. A story of ambition, bad luck, and perhaps something far darker than. It was originally named Amazon, a proud, sturdy cargo vessel built to cross the Atlantic. But even from the start, the ship seemed cursed. Her first captain died suddenly on her maiden voyage. Soon after, she collided with another ship in the English Channel, and a few years later, she ran aground off the coast of Nova Scotia and had to be salvaged. Despite these ominous beginnings, the vessel was repaired, renamed Mary Celeste, and sold to a new group of owners in New York. They believed the ship still had a future. And in 1872, she was prepared for another voyage, one that should have been routine, but would instead become one of the greatest mysteries in maritime history. The ship was commanded by Captain Benjamin Briggs, an experienced and deeply respected sailor known for his discipline and skill. He was bringing his family along too. His wife Sarah and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia boarded the Mary Celeste, ready to cross the ocean together. Alongside them were 7 trusted crew members, handpicked by Briggs himself. Every one of them was experienced. Every one of them knew how to handle the challenges of the sea. In total, 10 people set sail aboard the Mary Celeste on November 7, 1872, leaving New York for Genoa, Italy, carrying a cargo of nearly 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. The weather was calm, the ship was strong, and Briggs' meticulous nature meant everything was planned to perfection. For weeks, there was no sign of trouble. Another ship, the Dei Grazia, a British brig, left New York a week later, following a similar course across the Atlantic. Its captain, David Morehouse, was a friend of Briggs. Neither man could have known their fates were about to collide. On December 4, 1872, nearly a month after Mary Celeste departed New York, the crew of the Dei Grazia spotted a vessel drifting aimlessly about 400 miles east of the Azores. As they approached, they recognized the name painted across the hull, Mary Celeste. But something was terribly off. The ship was still seaworthy, her sails partly raised, but they were tattered and poorly set. When they boarded, they found no one on deck or below. Captain Briggs, his wife, their child, and the entire crew, gone. The boarding party searched every corner of the vessel. Cargo was almost completely intact. Crew's belongings, including their clothes, papers, and even personal items, were untouched. There was no sign of a struggle, no blood, no weapons. The ship's logbook was still there, and the final entry, dated November 25th. That meant that for over 9 days, the ship had been drifting with no one at the helm. Even stranger, there was 6 feet of water in the hold, unusual, but not enough to sink the ship. The pumps were still working, and provisions, food and water, were more than enough to last for 6 months. Everything pointed to one impossible truth. The crew had abandoned a perfectly safe ship in the middle of the ocean, for no clear reason. As the Mary Celeste was towed to Gibraltar for investigation, rumors and theories began to swirl. Some believed there had been a mutiny, but there were no signs of violence. Others whispered of pirates, but nothing had been stolen. And then came stranger explanations: sea monsters, alien abductions, even paranormal forces that spirited the crew away. But among all these wild ideas, one question still echoed louder than any other. Why would experienced sailors and a devoted family abandon a seaworthy ship in the middle of the Atlantic? And this is where the mystery of the Mary Celeste deepens even further. When the Mary Celeste finally reached the port of Gibraltar, news spread quickly. A ship had been found adrift and abandoned in the middle of the Atlantic, its cargo intact, its crew vanished. Newspapers called it the ghost ship of the Atlantic. People crowded the docks, hoping to catch a glimpse of the vessel that seemed cursed. But the closer investigators looked, the deeper the mystery became. The British authorities launched a full maritime inquiry. The ship's condition was carefully documented, every corner inspected. At first, investigators suspected foul play. Perhaps the crew of the Dei Grazia had murdered Briggs and his crew to claim the ship's valuable cargo. But that theory quickly began to crumble. There was no blood, no signs of a struggle, and most importantly, the Dei Grazia's crew had everything to lose if they had staged such a crime. If proven guilty, they could have been hanged. Instead, investigators began focusing on the clues left behind on the Mary Celeste, and some of them were deeply unsettling. First was the state of the sails. They were partially set, as if the crew had left in a hurry. The ship's wheel was still unlocked, and the binnacle, the stand that held the compass, was damaged. One of the ship's two pumps was disassembled, and the other was clogged, meaning the crew may have believed water was rising faster than it was. But even then, the amount of water found on board was not enough to justify abandoning ship. Next was the missing lifeboat. It was the only piece of equipment not found on board. The ropes used to lower it were cut clean, not untied, suggesting a rushed evacuation. And perhaps most disturbingly, the last log entry placed the ship in calm waters with clear skies. There was no mention of danger, no storm, no distress. Some investigators believed they had pieced together a possible sequence of events. The ship had been carrying highly flammable industrial alcohol. If even one barrel leaked, and evidence suggests several did, toxic fumes could have filled the hold. Captain Briggs, fearing an explosion, may have ordered everyone into the lifeboat as a temporary safety measure while they aired out the ship. But here's where the theory turns chilling. If the rope securing the lifeboat to the Mary Celeste snapped or was accidentally cut, the small craft would have drifted away, leaving the crew stranded, forced to watch helplessly as their ship sailed off without them. It's a plausible explanation, but it still doesn't fit perfectly. Why was their food still laid out on the table? Why were all personal belongings left behind? And why would a seasoned captain risk abandoning a perfectly seaworthy ship? Other investigators looked deeper. Some whispered of insurance fraud. Perhaps the owners staged the disappearance to claim money. But no evidence of sabotage was found. Others suggested mutiny, but Briggs was respected and trusted. There was no reason for his crew to turn on him. Darker theory claimed pirates attacked the vessel, but again, nothing was stolen, and no damage was found. One bizarre idea, still discussed today, is that the crew fell victim to sea madness, a condition caused by isolation and paranoia that drives sailors to irrational decisions. But if that were true, why did they abandon ship in such an orderly way? After weeks of investigation, the Gibraltar court came to a frustrating conclusion. No crime had been committed, but no explanation could be proven either. The official report labeled the case as inexplicable. To this day, no trace of Captain Briggs, his wife, their daughter, or the 7 crew members has ever been found. More than 150 years have passed since the Mary Celeste was found drifting in the cold Atlantic, and still, not a single body, lifeboat, or trace of its crew has ever been discovered. No messages in bottles, no survivors' journals, nothing. And yet, the mystery of this ghost ship refuses to sink. Over the decades, historians, scientists, and sailors have proposed countless theories, each trying to explain how a fully functioning vessel could end up completely deserted in the middle of nowhere. Some of these theories are rational, others are downright terrifying. Theory 1, the alcohol explosion. The most widely accepted explanation is also the most practical, a chemical chain reaction from the cargo. Remember, the Mary Celeste was carrying nearly 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. At least 9 of those were found empty or leaking. If alcohol fumes built up inside the hold, a single spark, even from static, could have caused a violent, invisible explosion. This type of blast creates no fire or damage, but it could have shaken the ship violently enough to convince Captain Briggs that the cargo was about to ignite. Fearing for their lives, Briggs may have ordered an immediate evacuation into the lifeboat, intending to tether it to the ship and return once the danger passed. But if the rope snapped, they would have drifted away helplessly. It's a chilling but plausible explanation, and one that matches the evidence. But critics argue that Briggs was too experienced to make such a drastic decision over a potential explosion.